Hello and welcome to Trash to Track. Now before we get into the restoration, I'm just going to show you about a new model shop that's opened up in Bourne in Lincolnshire called Ultimate Modelling Products. Now I popped in there the other day to have a look. Now they don't sell model railways but they sell loads of kits from Tamiya, Airfix. They also do Warhammer stuff, Tamiya, Mr. Hobby Paints, Tamiya masking tapes. So I was having a chat with the guys and said I'd do them a little bit of a feature on the channel. So if you're in Lincolnshire or the Bourne area, Ultimate Modelling Products on Cherry Holt, Bourne is a new model shop that's recently opened. So on with the restoration. Now in this episode I'm going to be looking at this Hornby 4F that was donated to me by Julian. And I do like the 4F locos, very workmanlike. Now the tender top is loose, there's a homemade tender drawbar, and the chassis on the loco section is loose as well. So it's going to require some work to get it back to running order. Giving it a battery test, it's very jolty, very jerky, although it is a runner, so there is life, so it's not beyond the realms to get this restored, he said, although now it's completely died. So we're going to strip this model down, get it running and digitally fit it. Now the clip on the back of the tender is loose, so I'm going to undo the screw at the front of the tender that lifts it up, and the tender clip at the back has actually snapped. There's only half a clip left. No wonder it was loose. But I thought this had been upgraded. I thought this would be a Ringfield motor in here, but it's not. It is the original Airfix type motor, which once serviced will run good. I've already got a 4F with this type of motor in it, and it does run rather well. There's a screw missing under the foot plate, which is why the body's loose. So I'm going to remove the one at the front of the loco. On the loco itself, boiler section lifts off, and I intend to put the digital decoder down there between the weight and the plastic shell in the firebox area. There seems to be plenty of room in there for a decoder without the need to remove any weight. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get some Loctite super glue on a cocktail stick, and I'm just going to glue that cab step back on because it's snapped off. I think that was done when it was in the box. But it hasn't been lost, so I can repair that, no problem. So just a tiny bit of super glue there, and hold it in place until it sets. And then I'm going to look at stripping down the locos. Now I'm going to clip the wires for the pickups, because again the tender and loco is permanently connected. And I am going to digitally fit this model, so I'm going to have to remove some wires anyway. So to get access to the wheels and the pickups, you have to undo these two screws at the top here. There's one at the front and one at the back under those wires. And then the whole pickup assembly lifts off and it gives you access to the wheels. Now it is quite dirty, it is going to need a thorough clean. A little bit of fluff and gunk. And there's the pickups. Now out of the 6 pickups, 3 of them were bent away from the wheels, so they'll need adjusting so that they're all making good electrical contact for pickup. The usual method, cotton bud and methylated spirits to clean everything up with. So I start by cleaning the wheel treads and the wheel backs, and not too much dirt come off. I mean, enough that they needed cleaning, but I thought the wheels were dirtier than they were because they've got this golden brassy colour to them, and I think that's just a familiar thing with models of this era from Hornby. So I clean all the wheels, all the wheel backs and the pickups, and I've now put that pickup plate back in, having adjusted the pickup so they're all sitting against the wheel backs. And now we'll turn our attention to the motor. Now I'm going to remove that big decoupling at the back there. I'm going to replace that with a smaller one. To remove the motor from this Hornby 4F tender, you have to undo the weights. The screws pass through the weights into the tender unit, the drive unit, so it holds the tender frame in place as well. Everything is all held in place with these 2 screws and weights. And once they've been removed, the tender frame will lift off once I remove the wires. There we go, and I'm just going to give this an inspection because these are known for cracking. The one on my original 4F is cracked, but this one isn't, although there is quite a lot of fluff in there. And I'm just going to desolder these old wires because I'm going to renew the wires on this model and get rid of that capacitor. To release the wheels, you have to remove the 2 screws that hold the base plate in, and then unclip it from one end, and it will unclip, releasing all 3 axles. Yet again, more hair and fluff, and you can get access to the gears now. I'm also going to remove the motor faceplate and the motor back plate. Well, the motor back plate, actually, it isn't a faceplate. On these type of motors, you undo the cover and it opens up from the back. So once the screws are removed, the back comes off, and there you can see the gears. There's some old lubrication there that's starting to solidify, so that will all need cleaning out. Look at it. Oh, that is grim. So I'm going to take it all to pieces, take the gears out, and then there's this black retaining plate in the motor itself that holds the armature in. Once that's removed, the armature can be lifted out, and the brushes are actually stuck to the armature, so that just shows the buildup of dirt and grime on there. So once the armature's been removed, I'm going to clean the motor housing with a cotton bud of meths to remove any carbon buildup and dirt that's been in there over the last few years. And as you can see, it is quite dirty. There's a lot of fluff and that was around that bearing. There's also a plastic washer that you need to retain that I nearly lost. But there I'm cleaning the commutator faceplate, and then I actually burnish it up with a fiberglass pencil because there was quite a lot of build-up on that faceplate. And then that washer that I just found in the motor housing there goes back on that motor spindle so I don't lose it. And there is also one on the rear as well. So don't lose them if you ever take one of these apart. I then clean all the old lubrication and gunk and fluff off the gears from the tender. And then I also clean this bit of the housing out that goes on the back of the motor, especially around that bearing area, because when the motor's been spinning, a few hairs have been wrapped around that. So everything is thoroughly cleaned, ready for reassembly. And you can see all the parts laid out on the workbench in the background there. So now that that's all been thoroughly cleaned, I'll just clean off the axles. You've got some old oil and some hair wrapped around them, so all them were cleaned. On the Hornby 4F of this era, all the tender wheels are plastic, and 4 of the 6 wheels have got traction tyres on. None of the wheels on the tender pick up electricity, although the wheelbase on the loco section is long enough that it should prove to be trouble-free running. So now I'm reassembling the motor. The armature's gone in, followed by that retaining plate, and then the gears are all put back how they should be, and then the rear plate is put back on. I did remove the brush holders from the front of the motor once I'd stripped it down, because it's easier to put the brushes in from the front rather than trying to balance them on the armature this way around, if that makes sense. So there goes the retaining plate, as I said. That all clips in there. And then the gears are put back on. I do put a small amount of oil on the gear spindles, just for some lubrication, because obviously we've cleaned everything off now. And that was all clipped in once I could get the gears to mesh properly. And once you're satisfied everything's in place and in place correctly, you can then tighten up the 2 screws that keep the 2 halves of the motor together. Little drop of oil again on those holes where the motor shaft spins in the plastic housing. And then the brushes and springs are put back in from the front, and those brass brush retainers are then pushed back into place. I have recently started to put the springs on a cocktail stick, just to drop them over the brushes. Saves them pinging off into the ether, and it also makes them easier to clean when they're on those cocktail sticks as well. So there's one brush retainer in place, and then give the motor a test, and as you can hear, spinning lovely, spreading that lubrication around, and that's all ready to go back into the chassis. So I put the wheels back in. I have checked the traction tyres on this model, and they all seem to be in very good order. They're not cracking or anything, and they are. I did clean them. So a very, very small amount of Labelle 106 on that gear train, followed by a small amount of oil. Now I know there's no bearings, but it just helps those axles spin in that plastic cradle a bit better. And then the keeper plate was clipped back in place and the 2 screws replaced, and that is the tender motor fully serviced. Another spin with the battery will spread that lubrication through the gears. Then I'm going to put it back through the tender housing like that. Make sure it's seated correctly. Before putting the actually screwing it all back together, I'm going to solder some brand new lengths of wire to the brush terminals. This will be fed to the decoder. The orange and grey wires on the decoder, which are the motor controls. I just wanted to get rid of that older wire with that capacitor. Now, I can understand people having the capacitor for suppression, TV suppression or whatever it is, on DC, but on DCC, that's all built into the decoder anyway. So once that was soldered, the weights were put back in place. This weight here has got a cutout underneath it for the wires to pass through. So make sure the wires are seated correctly, then do the screw up. And then the rear weight was put back on as well. There was nothing really I could do with the rear tender clip having been broken. So when I reassembled the tender, I put the screw in the front, engage the clip at the rear and actually hold it in place with a small amount of Dulux Materials glue and glaze, which is like a PVA. So if I ever need to take it apart in the future, I can break that bond very easily. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this Bachmann decoder, and all I've done is I've trimmed one of the mold lines inside, trimmed it away that holds the weight stable, and the decoder actually sits up there lovely and snug and out the way without any other modification needed. So I've soldered the decoder up now, red and black wires to track pickup, orange and grey to the motor, and the decoder sits up there inside that firebox. Just push it all the way in, because I've not left a lot of spare wiring on this decoder because I've got to shoehorn it in that firebox area. So it is pretty tight, but once it's in there, I can then reunite the chassis and the body. And I've also put a small amount of plastic underneath the foot plate to pack out the screw retainer because it had actually broken off. So I fit the front screw that holds the body shell in place. Now I'm going to give it a quick battery test. Now I've had people moan about this in the past. Why do I do it? Well, I know these DCC decoders from Bachmann are DC compatible. And as you can see, now we've fully serviced the model and it's DCC fitted, it's running rather nicely. So the last thing to do is to go through my pot of spare screws to find a screw that will go up and hold the rear of the Loco chassis in place underneath the foot plate. And like I said, I put out a bit of packing in there because the actual retaining hole had broke. So I put a bit of plastic tube in there just to help pack it out a bit. I also replaced the missing handrails with some brass wire because I didn't realise they were missing till near the end of the rebuild. And then I touched them in with some Tamiya black paint. And because my dad always moans when he comes around and sees the trains running in the garden that they don't have drivers and firemen, to pacify him, I've actually fitted a driver and fireman to the 4F. So now it's all done, I'm just giving it another bench test on DC, and you can see that it's running nicely. I've yet to fit an NEM coupling on the back, one of the clip-in ones from Hornby, but I will get round to it. And then it's over to the layout, programmed for digital running. And this is it running on its first time on DCC, and it's a really lovely and smooth run of this model. There we go, look. And it was when testing it on DCC that I realised I'd actually made an error putting the model back together. I don't know if anybody spotted it. But I'm going to need to strip the front down again because I've put the wheels in upside down. What a wally. So you can see here again the wheels are upside down because I actually filmed this bit before the testing. But you'll notice when it's running in the garden that the wheels are the correct way up. Now for a budget friendly model, the Hornby 4F is a good model, and as you've just seen, it runs really nicely when DCC fitted. And it looks like a 4F and pulls like one too. It doesn't have the finesse of the Bachmann one, but it is really nice, and I do like this model. So I'm going to give it a test in the garden, and unusually I've broken out some of the wagons I don't like to normally run. because all the wagons this 4F is now hauling are joined together with 3-link couplings, including connecting it to the loco. If you've got an engine or anything you'd like to see featured in a future episode of Trash to Track, or you need anything repaired, DCC fitted, email me at dansmodelrailways@gmail.com. Have a look and get it sent over, and who knows, it may even feature in an episode all of its own. You can see a length of wire there on the front footplate. That isn't nothing to do with the loco, that is just the hook I use to couple these wagons together, because like I said, these are all linked together with 3-link couplings, so it's not very often these get a run out on the layout, but because the 4F had factory fitted hooks, I thought I'd give them a spin. And it does look really nice. And I hope you'll agree it runs really well on DCC. So thank you very much, Julian, for this donation. It's now gone into the operational fleet of my railway. I thank you very much for that. Thanks again for watching Trash to Track. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next video. Bye for now.